Hello and welcome. Day number 3 from the ground up. This is Torque Athletics. Will and Elise here. Lucky enough to hang out with Dr. Stuart Currie. A little background on the doc over here. He has his PhD in chiropractic and PhD in bioengineering, correct? Mechanics, and you guys make your own custom orthotics over here. He's going to give us a breakdown on some pretty sweet information I think we could all use. So I'll stop talking, hand the floor over to you two.
Okay, thank you. So the first thing is that the purpose of this is to teach people that are, just trying to live more active lives, and so that their bodies can, enhance their life experience opposed to limit it. So consistency, is a really, really important factor in getting any fitness goal. So the most important thing that we want to talk about and that we want to get across is how the condition of your feet is affecting all of your fitness goals and your longevity to thrive in life. So the first thing is, what are like the most common problems that you see limiting people from consistency in the gym, and what do you think that we can do to prevent them and ail them?
Right, so it's a great question. I think as you guys have identified, the foot is sort of the foundation of where all this stuff starts, and it's how we interact with the ground, it's how we interact with our environment, and when we see imbalances that show up as the things your audience might know as a bunion or plantar fasciitis, or when it finally gets to the point where the tissue breaks down and you have a diagnosis, that's what people associate it with. But long before that, you've got imbalances and weaknesses that develop in the foot that contribute to that. You guys have identified that the foot's important. Me too, right? So that's what I do. That's why I founded my company, which is to, when people aren't moving and active, everything else from obesity to some of the diseases we see play into it. And if we can keep people moving, that keeps them in the gym. It keeps them getting strong. It keeps them getting fit. And so the foot plays into that. So as far as the typical diagnoses, maybe that we would see. Is that what you're kind of?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like plantar fasciitis and bunions and bone spurs, what can we do to, sort of reverse the effects of that, so that we can stay in the gym and do the things that we want to do longer, and maybe even what's it caused by, if that's something that's important for that person to know.
Yeah, absolutely. So we could talk a lot about the different diagnoses and what tissue is inflamed or angry, but we could also just kind of take a step back and say, what we see a lot is weaknesses and imbalances in this structure. So I brought my foot along so I can show you a little bit. My PhD work is in bioengineering. So we focus on what the human body does, human movement, and we measure things and we quantify things. And it's important to kind of see the foot as having two real functions, right? It's this amazing machine that comes down, hits the ground, and absorbs shock, but then also in the very same step has to reload and supinate and be a propulsive lever, right? And so that's two different functions: supple and accommodative, and rigid and propulsion. And it's the imbalances we see where a foot either can't do one of those very well that leads to some of these things like plantar fasciitis, which the plantar fascia attaches from the medial side of your heel and all along the bottom really, but up into your big toes. And as the foot collapses, you stretch the distance on that plantar fascia. So if this is an uncontrolled motion, stretching that distance there only really puts pressure on the tendon in here.
Makes a lot of sense. And then a tear happens and everything hurts.
And then you mentioned a spur. A spur happens.
So really,
Interesting.
ultimately, all of them are coming from some sort of muscle imbalance.
Not all of them, but that's definitely something we see as the most common. In our society, we've kind of we've covered our world in concrete, and we've boxed our feet up in shoes, and we we limit our ability of our foot to be stimulated.
So should we go and break down all the concrete and
right. So
replace it with grass?
This, right. So unfortunately,
we will make things happen.
Change the status quo.
Yeah, ideally, sure, right? That would help. There's a lot of factors that play into a weak foot. But But one of the things that I see, getting back to your original question, I think, is the small muscles of our foot, the ones that stabilize and control the small motions, are often just like maybe in our backs, right? So I'm a chiropractor as well, and the same philosophies apply up here. Sometimes the small muscles that need more of the waking up than some of the bigger ones that either get overactive or don't do their job right.
So in terms of a bunion, how does that affect somebody's life in a negative way other than just having like this gnarly bump on the side of their
Thing
foot?
that everyone points to.
I've had one for a long time, and I actually didn't even associate it with any pain or dysfunction. And now that I know what it is, which it really surprised me what it actually was. But how does that affect everything else, from the ground up really, and the way that I run and the longevity? How does a bunion cause pain, and also what can we do to reverse it?
Right. Okay, good question. So that's a big muscle imbalance one where we have some control issues going on in the foot and the first metatarsal here, or this part of the foot, drifting out and muscles pulling back in odd ways.
So is it a muscle? So I looked at the x-ray and it looks like the bone is what's coming across.
Mm-hmm.
So how does the muscle factor into that?
So you have muscles that attach all over to these things, but
Right.
one of them attaches in here. And you've got this motion where the first metatarsal is drifting this way, the muscles are pulling it back that way, and you end up with, gapping of the joint, then you end up with a spur type formation or bony formation in there, and it just kind of progresses to the point where, honestly, you said you didn't notice any problems, right? Sometimes the first time people really realize it is my shoes don't fit right, or my toes rubbing on my shoes. Those are the first signs of it. If you're not worried about what your toe looks like necessarily, right? Because who cares? It's in your shoes. But that can progress, and probably a lot of your audiences experience this, can progress to points where, well, now you've got pain, and now you've got shoe rubbing, and now you've got callousing, and now you've got blisters, and now you've got all that sort of thing. And fitting it into a shoe is the least of your concerns at some point. It's the fact that you can't stay active because your foot hurts.
Mm-hmm.
And would a bone spur cause knee pain and low back pain?
Well, bone spur is your body's reaction to any
not
stress.
bone spur, bunion.
A bunion.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of a symptom, and it usually goes with other symptoms that go on at the body, for sure.
So eventually it probably will cause a lot of, in terms of collapsing in on your arch and then your knee sort of going in, especially while you run, you're just reinforcing that pattern over and over and over. Would eventually that cause a lot of knee and back and a lot of other pain in a lot of other areas?
Yeah.
So it's more, it is important to fix that for a lot of other reasons other than just your shoe. Well, and honestly, even if your shoe did fit and that didn't rub against, it would still cause other problems eventually, right?
A bunion is a pretty good sign of something going wrong in the foot. I think to answer your question, yes.
Okay.
When something goes wrong in the foot, things change all the way up, right? The foot bone's connected to the knee bone. That's a song you could say. It's true, right? So yeah, absolutely. It's something that I've focused on for 15 years or so of my career. You guys are starting to help your clients with foot stuff because, it's kind of a cliche, but it all starts at the ground. And,
Totally.
That's right.
that's where it all starts.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of a bunion, what can we do to...
Oh, yeah. So I'll show you my favorite exercise. So...
Oh, goody.
This is saying a lot about you.
Yeah, exactly.
This is your favorite exercise.
My favorite exercise is foot exercise. So there's one of my favorites has to do with spreading your toes and extending your toes. The reason it's my favorite exercise is because there's a lot of stuff we can do in the foot. This one's actually fairly well researched, actually showing that if you do it enough, you can reduce bunion angles, which is really cool, right? So you're showing that imbalances develop, and if you correct those imbalances and try and work on the muscles a little bit, there's hope, right?
Yes,
and so
hope is good.
Yeah, hope is good. So it's really simple. It's 3 steps. And I'll demonstrate with my hands here, and then maybe you can focus in on her feet when she tries it.
Okay.
But essentially what you're doing with your toes is keeping the balls of your feet, the weight evenly distributed, and your balls of your feet on the ground. You're going to extend your toes up. You're going to take your pinky toes, and you're going to bring them down to the ground, keeping the balls of your feet on the ground. And then the last step is to bring your big toe curl it and crunch it down to the ground, right? Leaving the 3 middle toes up. And you can try and give her a shot of whether she can do it. I'll walk through the steps again. It's all toes up, pinky toes down. It gets hard for people, right? And then big toe down to the ground.
Definitely one you should practice.
Right now, you know you're doing it right if your foot cramps and if you have the squinch face going on.
You're biting your tongue.
Yeah. The winking horse, whatever it is.
Yeah,
Somehow that helps. It must. So what is this doing?
This exercise has been shown to activate those intrinsic muscles of your foot better than a lot of other exercises.
So all of these guys.
The little tiny guys that connect the bones inside your foot, and yeah, exactly. The ones that I spoke about that can get imbalanced and weak.
And this right here, the separation between here, is what's causing my bone spur to happen. So weak muscles right here, right?
Yep, they're all over your foot, but yeah, you're trying to wake up the whole system, which is the bigger picture.
Right.
Waking this up, getting your foot used to being talked to again by the ground and its surface is only helps move everything up.
Right.
So how, like, would I try to put my pinky on the ground and then my big toe and then relax it and then go again? Like, what's sort of like the rep range and
prescription?
Yeah. So honestly, well, here I'll tell you what the research says. Which is people's bunions improved when they did this 20 minutes a day, 3 times a day for 8 weeks. Okay, so that's a lot.
They improved like dramatically.
They improved a lot, right? So that's what actually reduces the angle. That doesn't mean it's an all or nothing thing. And I tend to not prescribe my exercises, especially foot exercises, because they can be a little bit boring. I tend to not prescribe them, do this 3 times 10 times however many reps. I tend to say things like, do this while you're shaving. Do this while you're doing the dishes.
Okay.
Do this, like set times during your day that you can focus on doing this exercise. I've had more luck getting people to do it that way, picking a trigger in their day that says, oh yeah, I'm brushing my teeth. I need to have my toes up and my pinkies down and my big toes down.
Perfect. Kind of like the practice of Kaizen, if you guys are familiar.
No.
1 minute a day spreads to 2, spreads to 5, spreads to 10. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that would be my
Cool.
advice on it.
Perfect.
So
That's awesome.
Plantar fasciitis is probably, when I was a brand new trainer, that was like one of the very first things that a client of mine had. And so, I Googled like what to do, and it's what led me to research Kelly's shred and just really honestly like try to solve other problems for clients that no other trainers were doing.
Yeah.
And plantar fasciitis, everything that I had done, nothing was working.
Yeah.
And so I developed like my education in terms of that, and some things would help for a little while, but as soon as we would try to run, anything more than 3 or 4 miles, it's like everything would just start to come back. And I really was having a problem like fixing it for people and like keeping it fixed.
Yeah.
That makes sense. We could do compression wraps and all sorts of stuff for
Ice
it.
and rollers and all this
Oh,
stuff.
and all day, and then they're like, they think that we're like, the greatest trainers in the entire world. We like made it go away, and no physical therapist ever did.
Yeah,
But it's like a week later, or 2
Right.
weeks later, the moment you start running again. So what can we do to change that? What's it being caused by? I feel like so many people have this.
Yeah, so it's probably our number one thing that we see here, or that the docs that use us see as well around the country. I would say, the number one thing here is, and I can't remember if we've already gone over this a little bit, but it's caused by an uncontrolled foot stretching the bottom of the plantar fascia, right? And then
So can I just, and I've said this to people before, so I apologize if any of my clients hear this and he tells me I'm wrong. But Torque is the name of our company, right? Which means this. That's what we got. That's where it came from. So if you collapse in on your arch, that's what's causing that to get stretched, right? And then it slowly starts to tear that tendon, and then the tendon just like grows back together, but shorter.
we're not so sure it grows back shorter, but essentially that constant pulling then creates inflammation. Your body says, uh-oh, I don't like that. I'm going to create some inflammation to try and heal that. Eventually that constant pulling forms a spur, and that's where you get your bone spur and stuff like that.
Oh,
Interesting.
It's from plantar fasciitis?
It's from the pulling of
The
tendon, right?
stretch
So
tendon.
I could take an x-ray with someone with plantar fasciitis, and I might see a big spur on their heel. As a result of the tension, right? So your body in response to stress just lays down more bone wherever it feels there's too much stress.
Which is so wonderful.
Trying to stabilize the
It is.
instability.
It's
It is,
amazing.
yeah.
It's cool.
And
That's right.
really messed
Yeah.
up all
Yeah.
like at the same
Yeah.
Right.
The body's
Wow.
smart and kind of stupid. It's
So-
terrific.
right.
It's an amazing machine. Yeah.
So, okay, so what can I do to
So-
okay, I'm sorry. So plantar fasciitis can eventually cause a bone spur, though.
Yeah,
And bone
yeah.
spurs are awful.
They're related, right? Now the amount of your pain isn't necessarily related to the size of your bone spur. That's something else too. Like,
That's really
just
interesting.
because it gets bigger doesn't mean you're going to be in more pain, and you can also be in tons of pain with no bone spur. Right? So
Okay.
the size of the spur is pretty much why a lot of the times we don't take X-rays for that anymore, right?
For a bone spur?
For plantar
Oh,
fasciitis, right? So that's what we do a lot of the time is not. We used to take a lot of X-rays for that, but we don't so much anymore just because the size of the spur has nothing to do with your pain. But as far as what you can do, again, we're getting back to a couple things. One, strengthening the foot is where you need to start, and shortening that distance, allowing your foot to be more controlled. If your foot is more controlled, it doesn't do that splay, right, that we're talking about. If it doesn't do the splay, you just took the tension off here, and over time, that gets better. There are ways to help that. There are some of the things you've mentioned. There is ice. There are, we use a lot of orthotics for plantar fasciitis. If it's an orthotic, then the goal is put the foot back in the right position and then strengthen around that new position, ultimately leading you to you not needing the orthotic anymore.
So the point of the orthotic is that essentially not one bad rep. Like you can take every single step that you take all day and do it accurately.
And then your body learns to re-strengthen around a new position.
It adapts to that.
Yep, right.
Which is really, really great. I don't think most orthotics have that purpose. Am I wrong?
They may or may not say that.
Right, okay.
It's part of my story. So I wore orthotics for a long time to help a problem. I had, some issues going on. They helped. They did great. But now I rarely wear my orthotics.
Okay.
Right? And you won't hear many owners of orthotic labs saying that. But I don't wear mine because I've strengthened my foot around that new position. I wear it when, I go out and do something crazy, but generally.
So the orthotic itself isn't actually strengthening it; it's helping to strengthen the position.
So you can strengthen it.
So what would I do? What would I do if I had plantar fasciitis, I have an orthotic, or I don't have an orthotic? How would I strengthen the best position or the position of my foot to avoid those things?
So you need to be doing activities, which you get in the gym. You start doing activities. We could probably talk for
Oh yeah,
2 hours about this.
we'll
right?
post another video.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
That was a good idea.
Okay.
So, I mean,
Cool.
would like curling your toes and like picking things up with your toes?
Yeah, absolutely, sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
How much and how frequent would somebody need to do this to really get rid of plantar fasciitis?
Everybody's different, but the biggest thing is to wake up the muscles in the feet and then translate to you doing those activities more often.
So
Gotcha.
doing maybe like 2 or 3 different exercises that strengthen your feet and then working out in that
Yes.
environment right afterwards.
And then thinking about it, don't have the parking lot effect thing go down, kind of
Yeah.
thing. Being just aware of your foot position through the
And
day.
then what
That's where it
about
starts.
Okay.
what about walking just like straight, walking correctly, like generating torque while you're walking? I mean, not one bad rep philosophy. Like
What does a normal gait
I mean,
kind
if
of
I were
look
going to
like?
help somebody, the very first thing that I could do would be to just tell them to walk straight. Would that do anything really?
So, yeah, you can start to change things up. Now, you got to be careful if you're telling them to walk straight, they have something else that's, going on that could get tightened, or, you have to be aware of their whole
Right.
body, obviously. But people do compensate by rolling off the inside of their foot and turning their feet outwards. So, bringing that back in some cases and having people conscious of, sometimes it's just being aware of your gait and what it's doing to either a pain or something that could develop.
Okay, how long do you think that it would take for somebody to alleviate or reverse plantar fasciitis? If they were
The
really,
effects.
What would they need? What would like a reasonable diagnosis for somebody? If I had a client that was never going to do the homework on their own, which we know is like a big issue with people, they don't do it on their own. I think they're not inspired to, honestly. They don't see like results right away.
Right.
So if they were going to do it with me first 10 minutes of every single one of their sessions 3 times a week or 5 times a week, how long do you think that it would take? How many exercises would you have to do?
So you can clear up plantar fasciitis in a matter of days and weeks.
Wow.
You're going in order, right? So everybody goes in order, meaning least invasive to most invasive. So you start with the simple stuff. You start with what you can do at home. You start with what you can do with you guys, being trained, being coached. You start with the muscle stuff. You progress to, all the ice and more passive modalities. Maybe you end up in an orthotic temporarily. In worst case scenario, you're headed towards surgery, right? But you want to start with the most conservative stuff and move towards the more aggressive stuff as you go.
Okay, but it doesn't have to take years.
No.
Wow.
Like everything, it all depends on somebody who comes in and has had plantar fasciitis for 3 weeks is a lot easier to take care of than someone who's had it for a year and a half.
Gotcha. Right. Makes sense.
Would we really know? If you have plantar fasciitis, does it hurt? No matter what, almost?
To get that diagnosis, you've pretty much got some pretty good pain. The hallmark sign is when you first get up in the morning or you get up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, put your foot on the ground and it lights up.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. And I mean, it's
sort of the,
between, you said days and weeks, huh? And it's not really a lot of times, like, do you notice maybe it might take months, or is it really like if you, okay,
Yeah,
it depends on how long you're
It
hanging
depends.
out with it, okay,
depends how
okay.
bad the control is too.
Right.
So, I
Okay.
hate to give you the depends answer.
Right.
Right, yeah.
But I'm still actually really surprised you say days and weeks.
That is, yeah, it's,
That's a big light at the end of that tunnel.
mm-hmm.
For sure.
And what's happening is that they're strengthening their foot in this position right here. They're essentially strengthening that tendon and the muscles around it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's not about lengthening it, or not lengthening, but it's not about improving like the range of motion or mobility or things like that in your calves.
That helps.
Okay.
That helps. You hit on something else there, right?
Does it?
So it's all related. So
It's all connected.
When you get tightness up the back in your calf and you're pulling up on this bone, you cause that there's that collapse, which is then that lengthening, which is that straining. So it can be related.
Okay, so
Okay.
lengthening calf muscles will definitely.
That's something that is pretty standardly,
Right. So maybe lengthen calf muscles and then strengthen your foot muscles and then go ham in the gym.
Yep. There you go.
Perfect.
Came up
That
with a
sounds
good
pretty
trick.
easy.
Yeah.
I solved everything with
Yeah,
the study,
there you go.
for 20 years.
Lengthen, strengthen, and ham is where we landed on
So
that.
the last one that's really important, I think, to a lot of our clients is bone spurs, especially in the heel.
On the top.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
And that I've only ever seen it in the heel actually,
Yeah. So there's
or on
a
the top of it, like what you said.
right here coming
Yes.
off the back of the heel.
And man, they look bad. They're scary looking. 'Cause
Right.
they're like jagged.
Yeah, and then people's feet don't fit in their shoes, or it rubs on the back, right? And then
Right.
they can't wear the certain types of shoes anymore because it rubs.
Right.
That type of stuff I'd be looking higher up in the foot a lot of the time, as far or higher up in the chain as far as calf. We've already kind of covered that. But
Okay.
if you think about the tension that's being pulled here that's causing a spur, we talked about why spurs form, right? Your body says there's excess pressure here, or excess tension, excess force. I'm going to lay down more bone to help it. Right? That's
Gotcha.
one sort of way it works. And so if you've got too much tension here,
That makes sense.
you can get the same thing where the body says, I need to stabilize that.
So I want
Okay.
to put some more
Yeah,
bone
more
in
bone.
there.
So
Wow.
what can we do besides surgery? I mean, I've heard pretty strict people like saying that the only thing that they can do is surgery to get rid of it.
Yeah. Well, to get specific, I'd need to see the person, I guess. But what really one of the big things is that helps some of the calf stuff. So maybe we should not only just talk about spurs on the back, but other tight calf issues. And there you're looking at big imbalances between the muscles on the front and the muscles on the back. So whether you're talking about the muscles on the front being weak, causing an uncontrolled foot that then can't lower itself to the ground and slaps on the ground, and then you run into shin splints and different stuff like that.
Wow.
Okay, that makes
Okay.
a lot of
So we're now
does.
moving into a whole other realm, but the imbalance between everything on the front that controls and everything on the back that can control things is important. And oftentimes we see big tightnesses on the back with weaknesses on the front.
So really, you could get rid of a bone spur via surgery and then still have shin splints 2 or 3 weeks later, or a lot of other problems?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of an advocate that if you don't fix the reason why the spur happened, then it will come back.
Totally.
The bone spur will come back.
Okay.
Yeah, I know somebody very close to me that had gotten bone spurs removed and then just had to get them removed again a year later.
Right,
And they came back really fast.
Really? Yeah.
Is that possible? Like, they can come back really fast? I mean, within a year?
Yeah.
Especially if whatever's causing it has not even been dealt with or looked at, I'm sure. It's just getting worse constantly.
I think that can be a really good thing.
It is.
If it's causing a year, they can